Yes. Yes, it's all working. Oh my god, that was a fucking hectic moment. So just to catch everybody up as to why I might seem a little bit flustered, because I had some technical problems last time I did a stream where it kind of cut out, so I couldn't hear the callers who were calling in, and for that I apologise a lot. By the way, it must have been very frustrating for you to be like, you've taken the time to call in and I couldn't hear you, so I apologies. And based on that, I thought, right, time to revamp my streaming setup, because I've been using this kind of fairly archaic setup for a while. I thought, right, time to invest some money to get like a proper setup, since I seem to be doing these streams quite regularly. So I did that, and I've just been playing around with it all day today. Did a lot of testing. Big thank you to the guys on Discord who helped me do the testing, and it all seemed to be working fine. Just came down to 7:30, the moment when you press like the button to go live, and it's all supposed to work perfectly, and yeah, it just starts throwing error messages all over the place, and it's telling me that it's not happy, and it's still not entirely happy, because there's supposed to be a feed over here where it brings in the chat comments. So let me just see if I can get this bit working, and then I will be a completely happy bunny then. So let me just copy this, pop that out, copy this address from here. Because yeah, what I'm trying to do with getting all this, having this nicer streamer setup is, well, basically having it look a bit fancier, like a proper stream, like what you see with some of these fancy dudes. But let's see if I can. Yeah, I'm still just grappling with the basics. Okay, so that's supposed to work. Source, come on, get it. Stream live, get the fucking thing then. Okay, it's not going to pick up my chat comments. Wanker. Okay, never mind. I'll bring him. I'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way. Anyway, hopefully you guys are all doing better than me. A little bit less flustered. Not have to deal with all this kind of technical shit. But yeah, welcome, guys. For anybody who's kind of new here, doesn't know what the format is. Basically, this is a live call-in show for psychonauts. So it's kind of for you to be able to come and have a chat with me, to use my platform. We can talk about whatever you want, be it whether it's something you've seen on my channel, something you want to, one of my other videos, you want to comment on it, agree with it, disagree with it, just something that's happened within your own experience, one of your own psychedelic experiences where you've had some kind of insight you think is worth sharing. Just anything kind of particularly interesting or weird around that psychedelic theme that is something that you think you want to share with the bigger community. This is the place to do it. So you can call in and be a speaker on this show, and the way that it works, there's some details in the description text below, but and doing that will let me know that you want to come and say something, and we can bring you up as a guest speaker, and yeah, we can have a chat, we can have a right good old chinwag. So there's a couple of things I wanted to just go through before we get into the main topic. Usually I just want to get the ball rolling with telling you what's kind of been on my mind, but there's a few little housekeeping things I wanted to address first. I'll just grab my notes to make sure I cover everything. So first of all, yeah, I just want to explain, there's not going to be any kind of video or live stream next week because I'm going to be away. I'm going to the UK to go to a music festival, a festival called Blue Dot, which I don't know if any of you have heard that, or how many of you are even in the UK. But yeah, I'm going to be at this Blue Dot festival. It's like a kind of like a collision of like science and consciousness and sort of awesome music. It's I'd say it's kind of smallish festival. It happens at this place called Jodrell Bank in England, which is kind of famous in England because it's got these huge radio telescopes, some like the biggest telescopes in England. In fact, I've got a few pictures of it here I can show you guys. Festival. Really looking forward to it, and I'm going to be there from Thursday through Monday. If any of you guys are going and you end up finding yourself there, by all means, if you come and say hello, if you spot me, I'll be sat. Well, I'll be looking more or less like this. You guys kind of know what I look like, but I'll probably be wearing some of my own t-shirts and stuff. And come over and say hello. I'm probably going to be. Yeah, if I seem a bit spaced out at times I'm there, you can probably guess what it is I'm up to. Because this is such an arty festival, we've got some very psychedelic themes going on, that I'm certainly going to take advantage of the occasion. So I might be a little bit on something if you do come over. But yeah, I mean, by all means, come and grab me if you see me, or drop me a message, something. Let me know. We can arrange a meetup or something like that. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing next week. What else have I got on the housekeeping list? Yeah, so I think that's actually about it in terms of housekeeping things to catch up on. Yeah, new software, new stuff. Cool. So what I thought I'd do here is was get things going with a bit of a topic, and I'd seen something this week. On Reddit. So I spend quite a lot of time on Reddit. Reddit gets a lot of shit, but for being a bit of a shithole and a bit of a toxic shithole. And there are bits of it which definitely are that. But also, I think some of the resources for psychedelics are actually really good on there. In particular, the ayahuasca subreddit I think is great. There's the subreddit called Rational Psychonauts, which I think is great, which is about, so as the name suggests, it's kind of psychedelic exploration, but from a more grounded view, although we'll talk about that in a little bit at a moment. And then there are some subreddits which are just just make your brain hurt and your nose bleed just from how fucking ridiculous they are. So the actual Psychonaut subreddit I'm not a fan of, but there are some good ones. And the one I want to talk about a little bit tonight is the one I just mentioned, is this sub called Rational Psychonaut, where there was a thread this week where they were talking about, and in fact, let me just bring up the quote from the thread. The title was, "How do you define what is woo-woo and what is not? How does one establish a line between these two realms of thought?" And the thread went into it. It was quite a lot of people replied to this thread, and it went on for quite some time. And it was very interesting, and I sort of really, it really struck a chord with me, in particular because a lot of the comments that I get in relation to my YouTube videos will be along this kind of theme of particularly because I talk a lot around kind of debunking stuff or unpacking stuff. I do a lot of things where I say there's certain stuff which I think is woo-woo, or certain things which I think is bullshit, or stuff like that. So, and often people will kind of push back on me like this. Well, it's like saying, "Oh, well, you said, you don't believe in woo, or you don't believe in bullshit, but yet you do. You go off to the Amazon, you drink this shaman, you get into all this shamanic stuff, so you're a hypocrite." And it's a kind of a good point, or it's an interesting point. And I think really what the kind of thing is well, we need to unpack what we mean by these things, because kind of words like woo-woo or even stuff like we talk about bullshit, or what's rational, or what's grounded, when we say these things, there's a kind of an implication of what they mean. But then I think what became fairly apparent within this particular thread that I'm talking about on Reddit is that actually people have different meanings for these words. And actually it reminded me of another comment that I got on one of my YouTube videos, and this was on the 30 days of DMT video, which I put out. I can't know, when did I put it out? Was it towards the beginning of the year, wasn't it? But yeah, someone messaged me and was saying, do I think, doesn't this show, the fact that I did this kind of 30 days of DMT, doesn't this show that I'm addicted to DMT? And I thought, that's interesting. What a kind of interesting way of phrasing it. And so I said to him, well, what do you think an addict means? Do you think an addict means somebody who takes something in a controlled manner for 30 days and then stops without any sort of negative consequences? Is that an addict? And it was kind of obvious that they were using the word addict in a way that I wouldn't use the word addict. I would use the word addict as somebody who is compelled to take a substance, whereby the need to take this substance, or at least the behaviour to take something, whether it's chemical addiction or behavioural addiction. But then there's something which is compelling you to take this, and it's kind of almost it's now beyond your control. That to me seems to be, that behaviour would be kind of like the opposite of what I was describing in that 30 days of DMT video. Now, I'm not saying that as like somebody who's saying, oh, well, I'm immune to being addicted to anything. You know, I think nobody necessarily chooses to become addicted to stuff. So obviously there's something going on that, you know, without someone necessarily intending to do it. But I don't think, I messaged this person back, said I would disagree that that's what it means to be an addict. So I can certainly see what you mean, that you could interpret this as like a risky behaviour, like a calculated risky behaviour, but that's not an addict. It's not addictive behaviour, not in my opinion. So that just kind of highlights me that there's a lot of words that get used where it doesn't mean necessarily what the definition means, and I think often people don't even know what the definition is of these things. So that's why I thought I'd unpack this kind of like this woo-woo topic. So I guess this comes first, like what do I mean when I describe things as being woo-woo? And to me, when I sort of talk about woo-woo, I guess what I kind of mean by that, it's when someone there's something deceptive going on. There's something intended to obscure, and it's usually when something's being explained in a way that has this kind of like appearance of like science or philosophy or spirituality, or something that has been studied, something that is kind of learned, but the person who's actually saying it doesn't have that knowledge of it. They're just using the linguistics of it to sort of create this aesthetic of knowledge, but actually what's going on is like just smoke and mirrors. And usually the sort of one of the big giveaways of when someone is sort of trying to invoke woo-woo is that they saying things which are quite complex, and it's usually things which are quite complex and that have been imported in from some other kind of discipline, and it's all usually in order to sort of like kind of confuse the listener, or to give what they're saying some kind of like veil of authenticity. And I've got like an example that I put together to just as a pure like kind of nonsense example of this, and it's usually one of my favorite things that often gets invoked within woo-woo conversations, which is the word quantum. Quantum is like one of my it just like you can spot the bullshit a mile off whenever you see it, particularly in like psychedelic sort of forums. Whenever you see people start talking like trying to explain things via quantum quantum effects. And I would be surprised if anybody in any of these forums knows anything about quantum effects. I mean, I certainly don't. I have a very rudimentary understanding of quantum, certainly not enough that I would ever go and try and argue it as a kind of like a mic drop to like, well, this, quantum, because I'm not a quantum physicist, and I doubt anybody who's having these discussions are. But let me give an example of this kind of thing. So the example I posted in the red thing was that quantum states one encounters within the DMT multiverse validate beyond any question that we are in fact living in a simulation. Now, you can say that, you can say it with a certain amount of authority, and I want to be absolutely clear, what I just said I think is complete bollocks. It's just something I pulled out my arse, but I think this is a kind of statement which would qualify as woo-woo, because it's importing these kind of terms of like quantum, multiverse, sort of using a very sort of academic language, like this validates it beyond any question, and it's stringing these things together in a way that kind of makes the statement quite hard to follow. It's like the quantum states of the multiverse is a simulation. Like what, So it kind of it's a kind of a nonsense statement. Now, and then so the kind of the question is then, well, is everything to do with sort of these altered states, the things that we're talking about within sort of the realms of psychedelics, because we are talking about these kind of extraordinary experiences, these extraordinary events that are kind of like often beyond description, beyond comprehension. And and then you get people like myself who sit here and I talk about trying to get meaning from these. I talk about getting healing from these. I talk about these events having extraordinary depth and sort of narrative power to ourselves, like psychological power, emotional power. Talk about them sort of creating connections with yourself, with your sort of lineage back through time into the future, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, am I talking woo-woo? Am I talking sort of bollocks? Am I talking is this rational discourse? So the way I sort of think of it is that for those of us who are interested in these experiences, we've got to have a way of talking about them. And it's very tricky with our sort of current our current language tools. But I think the way that where certainly where I try and separate myself, or what I do, from the kind of like the some of the stuff I criticize of like people being very woo-woo, very sort of like just saying anything. I think the line where I draw around this is that I think that when we're describing things, it should be in an attempt that provides clarity and reason, and rather than obscurity and pointing towards sort of like blind dogma. And I think a very simple way of doing that is to be very clear about where there is an objective and subjective divide. So if I'm talking about a subjective experience, and likewise if anybody is talking about a subjective experience, I will never criticize anybody talking about their subjective experience. If someone says to me, I had this experience and it felt like, I had this experience and I met God. I had this experience and I was surrounded by aliens. I had this experience and I saw my dead grandmother, and she told me something, and because of this, I healed. I feel better. I have zero problem with that, because this is someone's personal experience. We've got no fucking clue what is going on in any other sort of conscious systems experience, and we know that some very strange and profound and potent effects. There's even if we look at it from the scientific point of view, science is now sort of all over the place reporting the extraordinary transformative events in people's lives from psychedelics within sort of clinical settings. So clearly there is something going on here, and it's certainly my own experience of that. But then when we get into the sort of people making objective claims, and again, this is the stuff where you've often heard me sort of take the piss of people who claim to have some kind of paranormal abilities or superpowers or whatever, something whereby the subjective experience is not good enough for them, and they've had to try, or they're trying to transfer it into the sort of the material experience, or also even just claiming absolute truth around some of these experiences. So you get people who will say, because they have had this subjective experience, this is now absolute fact. This is true. This is true for everyone. In fact, it's just the way it is. And I find, this is something else I find sort of absurd. So this is where I kind of think stuff is woo-woo. And I think also, it's something worth clarifying with the name of this subreddit. This comes from this rational psychonaut. What I sort of uncovered certainly noticed was that a lot of people within that sub who were sort of clearly thinking themselves rational were actually using the term rational incorrectly. So they were sort of, I think, the way they were using the word rational was to mean scientific, as in that really the only things worth talking about within these psychedelic experiences or these sort of altered states were kind of stuff that could be validated by science, and science is rational. Now, it's for something to be rational doesn't have anything to do with it being scientific. So rational does not mean textbook science. Rational basically means, I've actually got the definition here, so I'll just put this up on screen for you guys. just basically has to be based on some kind of reasoning rather than something whimsical, rather than something that's, I often use the phrase of people pulling things out of their ass. It means they're being whimsical. They're just like, oh, this is this because I feel it is, or this is this because, people start stringing things together. And that's not a particularly reasoned way of thinking. Now, the reason I mention this is because it ties back to sort of my views on the sort of shamanic world. The shamanic world, to sort of many of us in the West, will seem absolutely bizarre, and certainly people would say this is woo woo. This is sort of like, it's barbaric, it's woo, it's just superstition, stuff like that. There's what I found as I explored these kind of cultures. There is a lot of reasoning there. There is a set of logic there, which is actually fairly robust. Now, you might not agree with it, and again, rational has got nothing to do whether something is like fundamentally true or not, or whether you agree with it. It's got to do with us. Has it come from a place of reason, or have they just pulled it out of their ass? And shamanism has definitely, this is a very well established tradition with some sort of very clear rules and logic to it. And again, you might not agree with some of these things, and some of these things in themselves might be completely incorrect. But there is a reason, there is a set of reasoning to it. So when I talk around sort of stuff which I consider to be woo-woo or bullshit, what I'm sort of saying is that I think the stuff I'm usually criticising, I think, is without a sort of reason or without a sort of any sort of foundation. And the stuff where I'm kind of interested in, I find that there is something, something reason there, something. And again, it doesn't mean I necessarily 100% agree with it all. There's a lot of stuff in shamanism where I said, this doesn't work for me, this doesn't work for me. Because what I'm interested in really is just what works. I'm looking at what works for me. I'm not looking at like, becoming a shaman or saying that everyone should get into shamanism. Like, again, there's a lot of stuff in there, I don't necessarily agree with or would recommend. But that doesn't mean the whole thing is. It doesn't mean the entire enterprise is kind of complete bullshit. So that was my kind of thoughts on the rational thing. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to comment on that? No, I think that's good. So what I'm going to do is I'll go over to the comments. If anyone wants to, like I say, have a discussion about this topic I've just talked about, this rationality, woo-woo grounded thing, even if you want to sort of have a sort of a bit of a debate about it, like see, am I talking crap? No, am I a hypocrite because I like things like this shamanism stuff, but then also call out other things? Yeah, we can talk about whatever you like. So let's see. Well, first I'll just do a couple of the chat comments, which, as I mentioned, was hoping we're going to appear here. This was where they're supposed to be, but I get this nice little error message here. But maybe next time I'll have sorted that out. But luckily I can bring them up some other way. So here we go. Quick things here. So from Nick, hey Rob, I'm off to Arcana for 3 weeks on your recommendation. Any last tips? Nope. Just go with it, Nick, mate. I'm sure you'll have a blast. Karina asks, taking Rachel. I guess she means, am I taking Rachel to Blue Dot? Unfortunately not. No, Rachel is a bit of a princess, and she's not particularly into camping out in fields, in potentially muddy fields in England for like 4 or 5 days. So Rachel will be home with her nice warm shower and her creature comforts, while I'll be in a field somewhere with a group of my sweaty, beardy mates. And but if any of you guys want to see the kind of stuff we're up to, just follow me on Instagram, and I'll be posting some pictures there of me getting absolutely shit-faced with my friends, and I cannot wait. It's going to be awesome. For 2020, how to help a close person to try psychedelics. I try to explain to them what they are, and I want to find a way so they can have the same experience. Please help. Mate, my advice there would be don't. I do not think you can just convert somebody to psychedelics. I think the best way that you can convince someone that psychedelics are a good thing is by you manifesting a positive behavior. If you go around to people saying, guys, you need to try psychedelics, you will sound like a nutcase. Okay, you're going to sound like somebody who is addicted or someone who's lost their shit. Just be an awesome person And then when people say to you, like, what is it with you? Why are you so positive? Like, why are you so creative? Then you can say, yeah, I mean, I explored these things called psychedelics. I found they help me. But don't just go badgering people into trying psychedelics. It's probably the worst thing you can do for them. Okay, let's have a look. Some comments on the woo thing. So from youth, I see woo as simply something that can't be defined and ideally tested in some abstract mathematical framework. Okay, so, I'm not sure about the mathematical framework, although, yeah, I'm sure on some level everything could be condensed down to maths, but the maths at that point becomes unworkable. But, it's like, an example I always use here is like things like emotions. Like, is love woo? I mean, can you define and test love in some abstract mathematical framework? Can you test family, the concept of family, in an abstract mathematical framework? I don't think you can, mate. So I think you'd probably want to... I get what you're saying, that it should be something ideally testable. But I think, again, this is going too far into the science element of it, because we know that there is stuff. I think we could all accept that there are things going on within our human experience that we all accept is kind of happening. Things like love, anger, emotions, that there's something we aspire, something we feel like we aspire to, like in our children, that it just doesn't condense down into a science textbook. So I'd probably disagree with a little bit on that definition there, mate. So someone's saying, for 2020, I wrote a book after my second trip and a master's degree after my third trip. They are power. Yeah, they definitely do, mate. In fact, it's one thing I covered in a previous video. I think it was actually the integration video that I made, the integration 101 video, where, I was saying that one of the reasons psychedelics are so useful is that they serve as a catalyst. They give this very effective kick up the arse, which then sort of inspires you to sort of want to go and do stuff, to make changes. And if you do make those changes, then you can turn around some huge positive turnarounds there. So that's certainly what I find when I come back from something like a retreat, is that I'm not only have I had this kind of like transformative experience, but then I feel inspired to make those transformations and make them stick. So because you could come home from one of these, from any experience, and like, wow, I've just had my mind blown. That was awesome. Okay, or back to normal life. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think having your mind blown and having awesome experiences is a great thing. In fact, that was one thing that came to me on this last retreat that I've just been on, and I want to be a bit reserved about what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's kind of relevant to what I'm about to say. That's a bit roundabout way of coming out with something. But what became very apparent to me on my last retreat in Peru was that I'm kind of done. I'm kind of done in regards to this healing journey that I've been on for a few years now. And for any of you who've been around, on the channel watching my stuff for a time, you'll have heard me talk about that I was looking to resolve some trauma from something that happened in my childhood, and I really got this kind of reassurance that yes, this is done now. This particular thing that you're looking to heal it's done. It's resolved. Now that doesn't mean I'm like some enlightened super. It just means this one nugget of stuff that I'd set out to resolve is now done, and that was a very strong message throughout these 8 ayahuasca ceremonies that I've just done. And I was like, I remember I was thinking like, yes, thank fuck, because now I can sort of I'm kind of a little bit worried about saying this 'cause it sounds a bit sort of cocky, but I was like, oh god, now I could just get back to just having a fucking awesome time. like I don't have to worry about sort of like going into these experiences like thinking, oh my god, is this going to be, I'm going to be dragging up all this stuff again, I'm going to have to face all these demons again, I'm going to have to do this. It's like, no, I felt very reassured. I'm done. Let's just get back to having some awesome stuff. Doesn't mean there's not more stuff to heal or that other things, but I'll cross those bridges when I come to it. But for now, I felt like I was given a new focus of, just get back to this real exploring my consciousness kind of thing, exploring the amazing sort of wonders of these experiences. So that's kind of, I think, you're probably going to see a little bit of a shift in the sort of kind of the stuff on my channel. Not a huge shift, because I don't think I always try to balance out the stuff I talk about. Sometimes I talk about all this ayahuasca stuff and this plant medicine and healing stuff. Other times I just talk about the journeys, these trip reports and stuff. And now I feel like I'm sort of, okay, I'm done with that kind of that healing part of it. I might talk about it a little bit more, because obviously there's a lot happened on this 2-week retreat. But then I'm going to sort of try and get more back to telling the stories around my experiences and sort of just doing that stuff. So I'm kind of really looking for. I felt really energized from that to sort of to get this kind of message from these experiences. Just get back to exploring awesome stuff. So hopefully that doesn't sound too flippant, but that's kind of one of the directions we're going to be going in. Okay, I think now let's see if anyone's looking to have a chinny wag. So let's go with. I think I'll just go with my first mate, old. Secular shaman. So you should have a little button there, mate, you can press, and hopefully it's all going to work now. So like I said, new platform, technical things. So secular shaman, if you want to, mate, you should have a little button you can press. If not, I'm going to move on. Oh, there it goes. Now let's see if this works. Can you hear me, dude?
Yes, I can. Sorry, Discord crashed when I tried to press accept.
I sympathize, mate. We're all having technical problems today. How are you doing anyway?
I'm good. Slightly intoxicated, so I hope I can hold the conversation. How's my sound level?
It's a little bit quiet, mate. But I don't know I'm never sure whether what I'm hearing is the same as what the audience is hearing. So I don't know. Maybe one of the audience could answer in the chat. Is everything okay? I can definitely hear you. It's just a little bit quiet.
Last time you told me I was a little bit quiet, and when I heard the stream back, I was obscenely loud, annoyingly loud. So
yeah, I know. I'm absolutely shit with the phones. But David Walker in the chat is saying it is quiet. People are saying you need to turn up your sensitivity.
Okay.
I'm guessing they mean your mic rather than your sort of emotional state. But
yeah, I'm turning up the gain. I have a external interface. Should be okay now.
That's a lot clearer. Yeah.
Okay. So I was taking lots of notes while you were typing, and my note application crashed too. First of all, I've never heard of that festival. I am in the UK. Seems fun, but at the same time, I'm going to Secret Garden Party. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, big one. I'll do a little plug there. I'm going with Psycare UK, who are a charity that provides welfare support for festivals. Basically, we take care of people that are having difficult experiences, usually drug-induced, but not only. So if you're going to any festival that we work with, look for us. We man our HQ 24/7 for anybody.
That's awesome, mate. Yeah, I mean, if you'd like, stick a link in the comments below as a bit of a plug. It's that kind of thing. I guess it sounds similar to Zendo Project. Is it that kind of same kind of thing?
I assume so, from what I've heard from Zendo Project. Effectively, It was born from Cosmicare, which is the welfare charity that operates in Portugal, and they do all the trip sitting at Boom Festival for people that have possibly had too much. And we are sort of a sprout off of that.
Excellent, mate. Well, I think that's a really a very noble and very much needed sort of service. I mean, like I said, I'm probably going to be taking something at this festival that I'm going to, and usually I don't. I do not take any kind of thing at any festivals. The reason I'm sort of changing that for this particular festival is that it's quite a small festival. This is not like one of these places where it's just wall-to-wall chaos. This is actually quite a chill, very kind of sciencey. A lot of the things that are happening are sciencey talks and stuff. So it's much more, yeah, it just seemed like a much better setting for something like that. So I'm just going to take like a smallish bit of LSD and see what transpires. But yeah, I mean, I think that sounds awesome. That thing that you're involved, that organization you're involved with.
Yeah, it's very important work, and I actually felt it because the people we helped were actually extremely grateful. Also, people that saw us, helping other people, like they were coming to thank us about that. So yeah, and it's very rewarding. Like the amount of gratitude you receive back, the next day once they've come down and they come back, it's very touching. You make really good. It makes for really good human moments.
Oh, I can imagine, it ties a bit back into, I don't know if you saw my recent video around the retreat I've just been on, where I talked a lot around facilitators, and I think because basically what you're talking about there is a kind of facilitation. It's
totally, yes.
It's being there for somebody and being what they need you to be in that moment. And having sort of been in a situation where I needed help, and having someone sort of be of service to me, understanding what I was going through, helping me without judgment. I mean, yeah, these people are angels. So I absolutely appreciate that, the amount of sort of gratitude that you get and how rewarding that is. And also, I mean, I just, even though I will not be there at that festival, I would express my gratitude now, because I think it is an amazing service to provide to people who are going through that experience. So yeah, mate, kudos to you.
Thank you. I've been called to this role, in particular facilitation, and I was very inspired by the facilitators in Arcana as well back when I went, and yeah, it's a really important role. One of the questions that I had wrote down to ask you, finally, is what drugs would you take at a festival yourself, and this one or festivals in particular? But you said usually nothing. This time maybe LSD.
Yeah. So normally I don't take any sort of psychedelics or anything like that at festivals. When I was much younger, I would go to sort of like warehouse parties and raves and stuff like that. Then I would be taking sort of like speed and ecstasy and stuff. This is when I was in my late teens and early 20s, but I kind of recognized, because I was doing psychedelics from quite a young age, I just recognized that these were things kind of like not to be fucked with, really. So particularly like going to somewhere like a rave or a warehouse party, which just very what could be quite stressful if things start going south on you. So that's sort of the reason I've changed my mind on this one is, like I say, I went to this particular festival back in 2019 before the pandemic hit, and I kind of saw for myself what this festival like, and there is just a lot of space. I would describe this as like a fairly middle class festival, and like this is not full of like kids getting wasted. This is like kind of like it's very arty. It's lots of sort of I'd say quite academic. A lot of people a lot of these science talks going on. So it's a place where you've just got a lot of space to go and chill out. And because of all these art installations and this kind of science and theme, this kind of like just the landscape of this being at this huge radio telescope and stuff. It's kind of inspirational. It's more of an inspirational festival than a sort of like, yeah, let's get fucking wasted festival. So there, I could just sort of thought, yeah, when I was there in 2019, I thought, yeah, I could just see myself just, finding a little spot here, putting a blanket on the ground, just watching some of these art installations, and just going with it, and doing a bit about either a bit of mushrooms or a bit of LSD. Nothing to have like to try and have some sort of complete reality swap, but just as a bit of a kind of an enhancement. And so LSD I think is probably going to be my weapon of choice at this thing.
LSD is also my weapon of choice in festivals, but for a very different reason. I don't know if you've met people that have the property that I will describe, but I can take obscene amounts of the nice word, amounts of that drug, and I will remain just sober, lucid, grounded. Like I could be on 800 mics right now talking to you, and you would have no idea, like these levels. So it's, for me, ironically, even though many people find it a very wild drug, for me it's the most predictable experience. Like I know on the hour what the effects are going to be, and I can even sense where I am in the trip and how many hours have passed without even having to look at my phone. It's weird.
Okay. I just want to check with everyone because I'm just getting a message. Does my voice sound okay here, or is it people are saying it's echoing? And I'm wondering, it depends on, I guess.
Not for me.
It sounds okay. Okay. I'm not sure where people.
Oh.
Is
Maybe,
it that?
maybe I had my my speakers on, and maybe I was retransmitting you. Is it better now? People in the audience?
I don't think it was you. I think it was just me who was echoing. But can anybody sort of like confirm? Is it
They say slight echo,
slight echo? Is the echo on YouTube? I wonder if I should.
and you're good now.
I'm good now. Okay.
Maybe
I'm
it
good.
was me. I'm not sure.
No worries. Okay. Well, as long as people can hear, just let us know, guys, if there's any change and if it becomes unlistenable. But sorry, mate. You go on.
Yeah, you said when you were young you would do like speed and ecstasy. Do you, at this point, do you not find any value in occasional MDMA experiences?
Oh yeah. I do,
Okay.
but it has to be very occasional. So
Yes.
I think with me, I would say MDMA's maybe once a year, maybe. Because the come down I experience from it is horrific, and I think this is probably a result of the amount I abused it in my early years. So I used to be one of those sort of, from my late teens through to sort of like mid-20s, I was, there were periods where I was taking MDMA, like very, very large amounts of MDMA. Like every weekend would be speed and MDMA. Every weekend.
I've heard this story a lot in the UK from your generation, and this
Exactly, yeah.
This points out how important it is to have drug education.
Yeah, I mean, it was the scene at the time. It was like the explosion of like sort of the rave sort of warehouse party scene. Like the bands like the Prodigy and the Chemical Brothers and all that was coming up. So, it was just kind of what we did, and I think I probably pay the price right now. But I love MDMA. MDMA is one of my favorite experiences ever. I mean, how could it not be? It's so euphoric. It's just amazing, and
not only
it's
euphoric, it can also be healing and teaching, to my experience, which I never expected from MDMA, because my main reason for taking it was always recreation. But last year I had a big slap in the face in the name of a lesson from MDMA, from all things, and I'm still on the path of integrating that.
The thing what I've found most sort of useful about MDMA is it's usually with particularly with myself and Rachel, because we usually do it together, and it just kind of strips us back to our kind of like simplest state, and anything else that was kind of like going on, any sort of whether it's kind of like the stuff that's going on around like Rachel with her eating disorder, or me with my sort of the stuff around my childhood, or just stuff all around at work, or stuff going on with the kids, or blah blah blah. It just drops us back, and we just Rob and Rachel, and we're just in love with each other, and that's all that matters. And it's and I would I think that is a very sort of like spiritual experience. But also, I mean, it doesn't hurt at all that it just feels absolutely goddamn incredible. So I am a big fan of MDMA, but I use it very sparingly these days.
Yeah, and
I'd never use it. I wouldn't use it at a festival, purely because of I just would not want to wake up in a tent feeling that sort of come down. It's terrible.
So last year I was supposed to go to a small festival in Berkshire, Medicine Festival. I don't know if you've heard of it. And I was supposed to go with two friends who had to cancel, because of reasons. And so I was left in a situation where I, had to either sell my ticket or go alone. My personal MO would be to just not go, because I've never gone to a festival alone. I've never gone camping alone. So doing both things alone is extremely out of my comfort zone. So I was just, grumpy about it. I had taken days off. So as the time, was approaching, my friends, not the ones that cancel, friends in general, were asking, so what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know, I'm just going to stay at home, chill with my cat, play video games, the usual. They're like, dude, just go for one night, and if it's horrible, you can, unpitch and leave. And begrudgingly I said, okay, fine. Long story short, I went, I made friends, I had an amazing time. I made friends that I still keep contact with and have steered my life in a specific way. So, meaningful changes. The night I did MDMA, which was a accidental overdose, but not dangerous levels, just amazing euphoria levels. I had the night of my life, and the next day where I took an seemingly obscene amount of LSD, 1 milligram, but for me it's just chill. I just had the realization that, oh my god, if I was following my usual MO, none of this would have happened, and I have lost, so much life for the past whatever 7 years or so, not jumping onto opportunities to do things like that. And I was very blue about it the following days, probably a little bit of a come down from the MDMA because of all the big chunk of life that seemingly was lost. But over time, and with therapy, because I do therapy with a therapist that is into the psychedelic scene and knows, so it's effectively integration therapy or psychedelic therapy with me having the drug experiences solo. I'm integrating it, and I'm trying to every time in every opportunity step out of my comfort zone, go where people are, live, have experiences and stuff like that. So even though it was my intention was pure recreation and do it in a festival and just dance my ass off, I've had this insane life realization, and it was
you remind me of,
to say the
remind
least.
me of something when I spoke to Dakota of Earth, this is on the interview I've got on my channel, and Dakota, he gets himself into some very unusual circumstances, like where he's sort of like getting high with cannibals and stuff like that. And I said to him, like, how do you get yourself into these situations? And often he's in places where he's with people he doesn't speak the language. He's got, so they kind of like, you have to rely on sort of non-verbal communication. And he just said, and I thought it was such a great tip, and I tried to sort of implement this in my own life since I heard it. So big shout out to Dakota for this. But he said, when the universe sort of sends you an invitation, say yes. So like when the opportunity comes up, like, hey, look, there is an opportunity here. It doesn't really require much effort. All you've got to do is say yes. Then do it. Like, it's, you go out of your sort of comfort zone, and that's where novelty happens. If you don't, you'll never have these novel experiences. And so, I've kind of really tried to sort of take that on board in my own life. And that's certainly been part of the reasons why certainly why I went to Peru last year, because shortly after that conversation, I got, an invitation to sort of like someone saying, hey, do you want to come and do this retreat in Peru? I was like, yes, that's it. The universe is calling. Let's go. Like, so I think definitely, in those situations whereby you could with the one you just described, you can look at that and think, oh well, my friend's just dropped out. This fucking sucks. What am I doing? I was like, let's see what happens here. Let's go with it. So again, mate, kudos to you for accepting that invitation.
And this is self-tapping myself on the back, but kudos to me for accepting following invitations ever since, and having changed my life from a person who's a housebody to a person that, true story, got called at Noisily Festival as a volunteer for PsyCare literally 2 days before the festival, and I just threw my stuff in a bag, found somebody to take care of my cat, and went, which my old self would never have done. Like I was really impressed with that.
Excellent. Yeah, good stuff, mate. Good stuff.
Regarding woo-woo, I was with you. I was typing as you were talking, and you've covered most of my points. One of my first point I nicknamed Quantum Chopra.
No further explanation needed.
So some of the things I've noted is uses physics term wrongly, vaguely, incorrectly. Pseudo-science, like crystals and structured water and all the goop products. Anything that introduces some kind of level and hierarchy, even within a spiritual context or within the emotional higher emotions and lower emotions, that always irks me off a little bit. And I find it a very big vehicle for spiritual bypassing. Unfalsifiable claims and absolute truths that you also kind of touched on. And then I kind of go into what I think you would disagree, because I've written external entities, supernatural powers, extraterrestrial related stuff like, Star Childs, Indigo Children, or Arcturians, and yada yada. And at that point, you said that the shamanistic point of view is in its own way rational. And at that point, I think that's where our potential disagreement would be. Rational, possibly, but based on a faulty epistemology?
I don't think so. I think when you get into a lot of these kind of, epistemology, sort of kind of spiritual stuff, then it's first of all, it's very hard to sort of falsify these things. But then it's also, I think there's a misunderstanding there of what they mean by these things. So when you talk about sort of shamanism, and you start talking about spirits, as soon as you start talking around spirits, then I think we start applying that to a kind of westernized version of spirits. We're talking about like ghosts or something ghostly and ethereal, something supernatural. They don't particularly see it like that at all. They talk around sort of spirits as in, the sort of the characteristic of a plant, or the sort of that there is something within a say a plant that is it is more than just the material of the plant, and that there are ways of by ingesting these plants that you can sort of commune with their consciousness, and they're sort of the evidence they would put forth for this is something like psychedelics. Now we could sort of say, well, yeah, that's just complete bullshit. This is like drugs just acting on the brain. But that doesn't actually disprove what they said. It's just basically, you could say very dryly, it's drugs acting on the brain, and they would say, yeah, that's the spirits. That's the spirits. It's and even saying it's drugs acting on the brain doesn't really come anywhere close to. It describes that there's some kind of mechanism happening, and they would describe that there's some kind of mechanism happening, but that doesn't do anything to explain the experience. Whereas what they are saying does explain the experience. It explains the experience much better than the sort of the Western language, because they have some reasoning and logic as to why this healing is happening, what is going on there, how they are for sort of facilitating it. And so again, we could argue whether stuff that's right or wrong, but it's definitely rational. They're not just making it up based on on sort of something that they just pulled out their ass yesterday. They've got a reason why they believe this, and you would have to go to some pretty extreme lengths to try and disprove it, if you even could disprove it. Now, you could not believe it, and I don't think you necessarily need to believe it to get the benefits, and I certainly don't believe most of this stuff, but it's not like complete bollocks. I don't think it's I'd say there is a structured just a structure to it, basically. So that would be my take on shamanism.
There's definitely a structure, no disagreement there, but the base of that structure and where all that logical structure is built on is interpretation of subjective, non-ordinary experiences. So that doesn't feel like an objective, study of the phenomenon like we would do in the West.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't necessarily think that matters. I mean, but I would actually disagree with that premise in itself. So again, we're talking around a description of the subjective. So that's what these people are dealing with. They're not dealing like there's nobody in shamanism who really cares about Western objective, clinical trials or anything like that.
Would you say when they say spirits and spirits doing things, they use it more as a metaphor?
No, I think you would have to get into. It's not a metaphor. I mean, first of all, it's a translation of what they would call it. So obviously, in their language, they're not calling it spirits. That's kind of what we're calling it. It's the closest sort of word we've got to their sort of like Shipibo language of it. Mm-hmm. But it's not a metaphor, but it's not supernatural. It is like. You are, I mean, to put it in a sort of a simple example, you take one of these psychedelic concoctions that they put together, you have these extraordinary experiences. They would say that, this is because of the spirit within the plant is coming into you and giving you this experience. Now, you could say, well, it's not spirits. It's DMT. It's got. They don't give a fuck. There's nothing wrong with their explanation. They're saying it's a spirit, and that kind of spirit goes further than just the chemicals and stuff. It's the chemicals. It's the ingestion. It's the experience. It's the physical sensation. It's all of it. That is the kind of that's the communion that you are having with this spirit. Mm-hmm. Now, again, we could agree and disagree and say, oh no, it's not this. But what they're saying, I do not think is fundamentally wrong. It might be simplistic, you could say, although I don't think it is at all. I think it's actually incredibly complex. But from our point of view, because if we're just looking at it purely based on a sort of an active substance thing, where I think if we are looking at that, we're completely missing the bigger point, because of course there are active substances in it, but that, again, knowing the active substances and knowing that they do something to our brain doesn't touch like 99% of what is important about that experience. It is the subjective part that's the important part with psychedelics. That's what they're sort of dealing with. And so I think the objective part is if we're coming at it from the West objective world, it's not the same language, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I will myself, being completely rational and secular, use the spirit of the mushroom made me realize that during that experience as sort of a way to explain what happened in that experience. But in my day-to-day life, I don't believe there is actually a spirit in those dried mushrooms that I have right here.
But again, it would depend on what do you mean by spirit, and what do they mean by spirit. Because again, we as soon as we say the word spirit, we're talking about the supernatural. That's what gets invoked. It's like as soon as we start talking about God, it's very hard to say God or spirit without invoking the supernatural. They don't think it's supernatural. They think it's the most natural thing on the planet. It comes out of the trees. It's absolutely natural. It's not ghostly.
I know it's awkward to interrogate a shaman via you, but do you think they would say that LSD has a spirit, even though it's not a plant?
I think they probably would say it doesn't.
Interesting. So,
but that's just purely my guess. I think my guess is that they would, it would have to be sort of purely sort of plant-based concoction for them to say that. I think I doubt whether they've even put that much effort into thinking about it, because it's just not their world. It's I doubt anyone even seen LSD.
Yeah. It's an interesting conundrum, because it obviously can induce an experience of similar magnitude for a lot of people, yet that would be excluded from that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be my personal priming on it, but even before I got into any of this kind of shamanism stuff, which again, all this shamanism stuff with me really only came in like the last 6 or 7 years or something like that, where I've been doing LSD and other psychedelics like since 20, 30 years before that. So for me, I never detected that kind of spirit component in LSD, and I still haven't to this day. I find LSD extremely psychedelic, extremely trippy, a lot of fun, but it doesn't have the same effect on me that say mushrooms or
neither
ayahuasca.
For me. Definitely neither for me. As I said before, for me, it's not even psychedelic. It's more of a stimulant with some psychedelic properties. But I know of people that have had very deep and spiritual experiences and communicated with entities even on LSD.
Yeah, I don't know, mate. So I get it. Maybe it's something I could, if I remember, I'll ask them if I ever, next time I see one of these guys. But that would be my guess. They would say probably not. It's like, is there a spirit of cocaine? I would say they'd probably agree there is a spirit of the coca leaf.
Of the coca leaf, yeah.
Yeah, but I doubt they'd say cocaine has a spirit.
And it's actually very interesting, because when Albert Hofmann isolated psilocybins from dried mushroom tissue and then synthesized psilocybin and sent it back to Maria Sabina with George R. Wasson, and Maria Sabina took the caps, she said, yes, this is the spirit of the mushroom.
Interesting, yeah.
So obviously she's not a South American shaman, she's a Mexican curandera, but it poses an interesting conundrum as to essentially, what is this spirit that they're talking of? Like,
Yeah.
is it the interaction and the experience we're having with a substance? Is it something that only exists in organisms?
Yeah, I don't know, mate, but I think just my guess is that because they are in a fairly closed system, as it were, and that system is so dependent upon the plants, that's all that they're referring it to, and that it would have to be a kind of like because they're just not going to be exposed to these kind of extracted synthetic pharmaceutical grade, then they're just not going to have the I've really run that thought experiment. But I think it would be interesting to put it to them. But still, I would still, whatever the outcome of that thought experiment would be, I would still say that does not make, even whichever way they jumped on that question, I still don't think it takes anything away from the rationality of the system, of the shamanistic system.
Okay, follow-up question, and this is not a dig at the person, I'll just use him as an example. You've had an interview with him, Julian Palmer. Would you classify also his beliefs as rational, given that they have an internal, consistent logic within, in my opinion, a very flawed baseline structure?
I would say that I've not heard a Julian say any, and again, so let's just be absolutely clear on the wording here. So based on how I've described, rational. So rational does not mean whether anything you say is true. And as I've stated plenty of times, there is a lot that Julian says that I would completely disagree with. He said some very strange stuff. I'm not super interested in that stuff. I'm not super interested in debating that kind of stuff with him. I'm not even sure whether he stands by that stuff. And not just to be clear, the stuff I'm talking about he's had ideas around sort of World War II and the Holocaust and whether it was sort of true or not. Which really upset.
I'm talking strictly about the entity stuff. Let's narrow it down to that.
Sure.
Is that in and of its own rational, since it has an internal consistency within the model he's created? In your way of interpreting the word?
Yeah, it's right. Based on the dictionary definition of the word, then I believe it is rational. Whether is it correct or not? I would say I would kind of disagree with a lot of what Julian said, even on that kind of entity model, or at least I won't say I strongly disagree with him, but it's not, certainly not my experience of I don't necessarily have the experience of trying to be taken over by interdimensional entities or whatever, and having to kill them and stuff like that. But I don't think he's not just going sort of nuts and just pull it. He's not like sort of being schizophrenic about it. It's again, he has got a kind of a system there, and it's fairly robust within his own sort of mindset. So I think it is rational, and which again has got nothing to do whether it's true or not.
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of a hard time agreeing here, because in that sense, you could any kind of mythological structure, as long as it has some kind of internal consistency, you could characterize it as rational, right? Even Scientology, you could characterize it as rational. They've got their, whatever, the aliens, their thetans, they've got things, and they've tied them together in a neat story. So is that rationality?
Yeah, I think... I think, well, from the mythological point of view, I think it is. Because again, particularly if you're talking around, say, like in mythology, particularly when the myths are intended as some kind of like explanation of the world, you wouldn't go back, say, if you had like a time machine, you wouldn't jump back like 1,000 years and say everyone in the world is irrational. That's not true. They are rational. They're just operating upon a different system than what we're operating on today. So, otherwise you would have to look back through the entirety of mankind's history and say that these people were all irrational. That doesn't work. It doesn't work in that kind of model. It's nothing to do with knowledge, factual knowledge. So people who were in like sort of Greek mythology or Vikings or whatever, they were completely rational. Were they correct? Probably not, but were they rational? Yeah, absolutely. If they believe there's nothing irrational about the sort of belief in Thor and stuff. Given the time that they're in and the date they've gotten. So if we go back to your Scientology example, if someone is a Scientologist and that they are, particularly if they were born into Scientology and that's the the system that they've been sort of fed, and they are making choices dependent upon that system, so that when they're choosing to do things, they're doing it based upon the rules of Scientology. That you could say that those are rational decisions that they are making, because they're not making. Say if the rules of Scientology say that you should make decision A, and that person makes decision A, then they are being rational. If the rules of Scientology, and you want to be a good Scientologist, say that you make decision A and then you make decision X and go and do a completely, then you would be acting irrational. If you weren't following any rules at all and you were just doing anything in any moment, you would be being irrational. If you just reacted to every emotion and whimsy that you had, that would be the definition of irrational.
Okay, so this brings us sort of back to the initial note that I had for this part of the discussion, which is rational, but based on a faulty epistemology. Like if we go back, 10,000 years, 20,000 years and see what people believe. Yes, they were rational based on what they could understand at the time, but given the passage of time, we have developed better tools in order to understand and comprehend reality. So, yes, in their system, they were rational, but yeah, based on that faulty epistemology.
Maybe, and that would be dependent upon us being able to claim that our current epistemology is actually correct, and that would be a pretty bold.
It's not the absolute truth, obviously. I don't think we'll ever reach that, but I think we have improved from 5,000.
Well, likewise, yeah, sure. But likewise, you could say this about the Vikings. They weren't acting on absolute truth, and yeah, maybe there isn't a Valhalla, but it's still it functioned enough to sort of get them to do the things they wanted to do. It worked within Viking society, and and I would say, particularly when you look at shamanic society, I would say it's even further along than that, because what they are doing is actually leaps and bounds ahead of what. So if we're so proud of ourselves in Western society of our science and stuff like that, then why are we now looking at shamanic society to shamanistic healing has way better results than sort of psychotherapy, and sort of people are looking towards these substances now as sort of like miracle cures. People looking towards the sort of the diet that these people are following. We know our Western diets are shite. These people are living very healthy. So I think it would be very bold of us to say that people working on false epistemology, I think their epistemology is pretty sound. I think particularly what it's doing in their life is pretty sound, and the benefits are pretty sound. So I think we'd have to be very careful there about blowing our own trumpet too much. Although I mean, don't get me wrong, I certainly agree that I think the thing that we do really well in the West, like our ability to capture this kind of data and to do these kind of tests and to sort of make these kind of progress, I think is amazing. But I don't think it's a fragment of a picture, a tiny fragment. And I think another fragment of that picture could be is the mythological model, is the shamanistic model, is the emotional model, all these different models. Like, I think when people like Terence McKenna say stuff like "we know fuck all," I think it's absolutely right. So not to downplay the amazing advances of Western sort of technology, but of Western society, but yeah, I don't see it as leaps and bounds ahead of shamanistic cultures. I see it possibly in some ways on the same par, in other ways ahead, and other ways beneath. And so I think we should.
Yeah, in terms of contributing to a better way of life, I agree with you totally. In terms of truth discovery, I don't think so. And I believe that mythology and the good parts of religion, ritual, community, and all those things are extremely important. But I think it serves us well to interpret them symbolically and what they represent for our human life on this planet, and our relationship with the ecosystem, and we should cherish them as that rather than perceiving them as truths.
I don't think. I mean, there's some good arguments that it was always symbolic. Like I don't think when you talk around like sort of like the Greek mythology, the very.
I am Greek, by the way, so.
Oh, okay, well, yeah. I'll not school you on it then, but for the benefit of our audience, but we're talking about sort of like Zeus and sort of, Hades and all that kind of stuff. Then Greece being the sort of the epicenter of learning and sort of the birthplace of science and so that. Now, when you look at something like Greek mythology, and certainly the way it's put out there, then the idea, or certainly how it's presented, is that these were people who believed Zeus was throwing lightning bolts out of the sky. And at the same time, they were coming up with the templates for modern science and constructing this amazing architecture. I think when you actually get into the nuts and bolts of it, this is clearly bollocks. They were clearly the myth. They knew the mythology was a mythology, and they weren't treating it literally. Not in the way that we talk about things being literal, like particularly when like talking about the Christian God being real. These were always sort of for what we would call myth, because otherwise you kind of trying to mash together what seemed like two completely opposing levels of society. One who believes in complete fairy tales, and the others who are performing amazing feats of consciousness and mind and science. So I think what I think the interesting thing there is that the myth part, I think, is just as important as the other part. And so we look at these things as like, oh, well, this is myth, we should discard it. No, it's myth, we should keep it, because there's something of great value in these myths. And we know this in our sort of innate need for stories and for archetypes and stuff. This comes across in sort of current psychoanalysis. So this myth structure is as much a part of the human structure as any sort of like biology or science. So it's part of it. So I think this kind of idea is like, oh, it's myth, it's bullshit, it's spirit, it's myth, discard it, it's spirit, discard it. No, if we look and understand what it actually is, and that doesn't mean that we believe in Zeus throwing lightning bolts down from Olympus, but if we what is truly going on here, it's like there's a lot of stuff even in the Bible or something. If you look at the Bible as as the literal word of God, yeah, I think it's complete bollocks. If you look at it as like, this is somebody trying to describe like the world, like the universe, perhaps they're doing it incredibly badly, perhaps doing it wrong, but it's still an effort there to understand what is going on. And this kind of these myths, these father figures of Zeus, the sort of all these kind of all these archetypes captured in these myths, I think is incredibly important. So I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater as far as myth goes. I'll put it that way.
I totally agree. I have no disagreement with what you said. And, even interpreted from a Jungian perspective and seeing them as archetypes that represent the human psyche effectively, or all the gods of Hinduism, which are, facets of humanity effectively.
Exactly, yeah.
As long as we interpret it as a myth and a useful metaphor and honor it in that way, that I think is perfect. I'm just very weary of people that go the extra step and assume very weird ideas, and because I think I might have said this on a previous Beyond the Breakthrough, but there is in my mind a very small step from I met an entity to the entity told me to do this.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's a subjective objective sort of divide that where I kind of try and draw that line, but still I think it's that thing of myth. Again, even just with the word, it makes it sound like something very easy to dismiss. And I think these are like, if you read any like Joseph Campbell's work around like the sort of the hero's journey, these myths, these archetypes, the Jungian archetypes you're talking about, there is a reason why we cheer when Neo gets up and starts kicking ass at the end of the Matrix. There is a reason why we cheer when Luke Skywalker makes that shot on the Death Star. And these things are woven into us. They are part of our humanity. It's part of our emotional state. So it's no accident that these things have such a visceral response with us. So we shouldn't just dismiss it as myth, or even as a useful metaphor. I think that's these are part. I would say this is part of our human sort of wetware here. These things are wired into us, and I think we should give them the kind of the respect and understanding and try and comprehend it for what it is. Doesn't mean we should believe, and again, this is the crossing of the subjective into the objective. Is Zeus literally on Mount Olympus throwing lightning down? No, I don't think it is. But is there something in there that's worth understanding. Yes, I think there is. It's more than just a metaphor, I think.
Yes, there is no disagreement there. Don't discard it due to the fact being a myth, but honor it as a myth and what it symbolizes.
Yeah. And on a myth in general, I think like myth in itself is something that could do with a bit of a boost, because I think it is something that's probably like dismissed a lot in our culture. But yet we sort of we wonder why, like, you know, people get so excited about Marvel movies and stuff like that. It's because they're playing into there's something in these myths that's important to us.
Yeah, Harari would be very happy at this conversation. Okay, I'll let some other people speak because I see lots of raised hands on Discord.
Yeah, it was a really great chat on that. I really enjoyed talking to you, dude. So you raised some really good points.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
I did. Speak to you later. Bye, mate.
Bye.
Okay, apologies, that one went on a little bit long, but it's just sometimes these conversations are so fascinating. Just got to see where they go. So let's see who's next, and we'll go with Avi. So Avi Atava. Hello. Oh, it's a very bad connection, Avi. I don't know. We're just getting a load of distorted noise. Sounds a bit like a sort of tremolo effect on a guitar. Don't know if anyone's ever heard like the introduction to How Soon Is Now by the Smiths. It's like that. Can you hear us, Avi? No, okay, mate. It's not working. Sorry, Avi. I'm gonna. Okay, maybe just have a check your settings, Avi, then try again in a bit, mate. Let's just move on to someone else for the short term. Okay, so let's go with Magic Zinski Philos. I hope I pronounced that right. So you should have a button, mate, where you can press and come and have a chat. Hello.
Do you hear me?
I do hear you. How are you doing?
Okay, fine. I don't know why, but when I connected, your voice sounds differently. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure. But you can hear me okay though?
Yeah. I can hear you properly, but the quality is worse. But it's okay still.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so. Yes, so I have many thoughts about this topic that you are discussing now, and I would eagerly share them.
Please do.
There were some interesting motives in the previous conversation. For example, how do you distinguish between two rational systems, which is like pseudo-science and woo-woo, but still like you can say that it's logical because it has a high degree of coherence inside, and which is better. So in epistemology there is a concept called foundationism, and it's about that you think like that you have some thoughts in your mind, and you ask how do you know that they are true, and you realize that you base them on other thoughts. Sure. And those thoughts are based on other thoughts as well as and you can have a problem here because like it can be this regress ad infinitum, but you realize that the most basic foundation for all the thoughts is your conscious experience. Mm-hmm. Because for example, when it comes to, for example, Richard Dawkins criticizes religion because like it's unscientific, it's not objective and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't realize that even science is based on subjectivity, because for scientists to be able to construct those intellectual models of reality, like the scientists must have in the first place conscious sensations of the world. So like you see something in the sky, for example, or you see some like moving objects and you create physics based on your sensations. Mm-hmm. So like it's science. It's not like totally objective. It's still based on subjectivity. And even when it comes to objective notions in science, that like this psychedelic stuff is bullshit and science is like truth and stuff like this, it's not really the case, because when it comes to science, I would say that you only have illusion of objectivity, because let's look at that. You state, somebody can state that science is objective because like other people say like similar stuff when they make scientific experiments, the results are similar, so there is like some kind of objectivity. But like it goes to this, that you just have sensations of somebody moving their mouth and making some noises when they tell you that scientific about, for example, the results of their scientific experiment. So like it's not, you cannot go beyond your consciousness. You state that some intellectual system is objective because of your subjective experiences. So like so when it so like you cannot like say that, for example, this spiritual psychedelic stuff is bullshit because it's not scientific, it's not objective. It's still based on conscious experiences like science. So and I have this thought experiment that maybe psychedelic experiences can be, for example, objective, a similar way that science is. That shamans describe that they see when somebody is ill, they can when they drink ayahuasca, they can see some patterns on their body that signalize the sickness. For example, somebody have a sick leg, for example, so the shaman states that they can see something like drawn on the leg from like this astral realm, or however you call that. So they know that so he gets info that the sickness is inside the leg. So maybe if, for example, a lot of non-communicated with each other drank ayahuasca, so if they see this like astral spot in the same place, it would be the proof that this is like that you can make objective models based on those experiences. Of course, this is like you must study it scientifically to tell whether this is possible. But yeah, if for example something like that is possible, you would be able to make an intellectual model which is similarly objective to scientific model, based on those experiences, because like everything is based on consciousness when it comes to doing those intellectual models, as I explained previously. And there is even a very good philosophical paper written by Charles Start in 1972, which is called States of Consciousness and State-Specific Sciences: The Extension of Scientific Method to the Essential Phenomena of Altered State of Consciousness is proposed. Yeah, so in this paper he compares like state of consciousness to paradigm in science. That like science can be based on some paradigms which are like just thought, not proven. That like, for example, Newtonian physics is based on the paradigm that like space and time is absolute, and Einstein said something different. But you can like when it comes to the to constructing science coming from consciousness as it's like the most fundamental source, as I explained, the situation is similar. Like you have different states of consciousness and maybe you can construct different like intellectual or even scientific models based on those states. For example, you can imagine that all of scientists like drinks ayahuasca or take shrooms or something like this, and they are in the similar state of consciousness. Maybe like maybe they would be able to construct like objective model of reality similar to the model that scientific method is about. So
Okay, I mean, there's quite a lot in there. So let's try. I'll just try and backtrack and unpack a few bits of it. So, I mean, I get what you're saying with the kind of the thing around. You talked around sort of Richard Dawkins and sort of or science having a basing what they would say is like objective fact around subjective experience, and I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, I think that's a a fundamental truth. Everything that we are experiencing is kind of subjective, but there are we can have enough of a sort of a consensus amongst those subjective experiences that we can sort of use there is a constant to these things. So when I had sex with my wife, then that was a subjective experience. But I think it's an objective fact that something came out of the end of my penis and went into her, and that was what conceived our children. So there is an objective. We could say we'd say fairly certainly how my children were conceived. Doesn't say anything about the experience itself. And obviously my experience itself was my experience. It could be flawed. I could be in a simulation, all that. But that happens enough with enough people that we can pretty much say, yeah, we're pretty much sure how children are made. We're pretty much sure how the planets are spinning. These things, this kind of information. It's kind of, not only is it like sort of makes sense and it's testable, we can actually then use it in useful ways within our subjective experience. So it's useful for me that electricity works the way it works and this computer works the way it works. So the fact that it was designed by somebody who was having a subjective experience doesn't mean that there's not some objective truth in what they've done here. There is, I would say there is quite clearly a computer in front of me. I would say that's probably true for most people watching this, or at least some other kind of device that is connected to an objective thing called electricity. There is objectively an internet. So I think we shouldn't go too far into that thing of like everything is subjective. It's like, no, I think that material reality is one aspect of reality, not the entirety of it, but one aspect. And just like with the previous caller, we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just like we shouldn't throw subjective experience. It's like, oh, it's only subjective experience. It's like it's only objective fact. It's only objective, but it happens through. These things are all part of the same puzzle. So I think, yes, there is an objective reality. Yes, there are objective truths. Yes, there are things we can objectively do science upon. And yes, there are subjective experiences. And my computer just flipped out. Hopefully it's still working. You guys still there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Cool. Oh, cool. That's okay. My computer just went bonkers. So yeah, I think it's all part of the same picture. And I mean, again, that's all I would say around that bit. So I think Richard Dawkins is absolutely correct. I've got a lot of, I really admire Richard Dawkins. I think he was very brave to stand up to the religious sort of fundamentalism that he stood up to in that time. Doesn't mean he's right about everything. He's just some dude doing science, and so let him be that. But yeah, obviously, by that same thing, science doesn't really have much to say about these experiences that I'm interested in, these psychedelic experiences, whereas shamanism has a lot to say about that. So hence why I'm interested in that. So again, these are all bits of the same puzzle. Let's not go all in with one thing. Let's look to see how the thing can all fit together, because I think there's truths, bits of truth in all this stuff. And the thing you're talking around, sort of like, models of reality and stuff. I think the stuff that science is most interested in. You talked around sort of getting scientists to all do some sort of psychedelic experience together. I don't think that would. I have the kind of these results. These results because science is primarily interested in the material reality. I think what's going on within psychedelic and stuff isn't. It's kind of it's a different sort of set of rails. But go ahead.
Yeah, but material reality, how do you, maybe first of all, I don't really think that there is something like material reality. I like George Berkeley's thought about metaphysical idealism, but like it's a different topic. But when it comes to even saying that there is like this objective material reality, so maybe like when you change the state of consciousness, you just go into some other reality that is material, similarly to the standard reality. Maybe there are like different various material realities. For example.
Sure, but sure, even following that model, though, following exactly what you just said, then there is still, let's call this material reality 1. Okay, so and by what you just said, there could be a million of these. So you could achieve some status of consciousness where you pass into material reality 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Okay, but 1 is still there, right? We're currently occupying 1. So 1 is, even if you move through a bazillion, let's say that these things are all equally important. There's some kind of multiverse thing going on, right? There's a bazillion different states of material reality. One of them is not more important than the other. So if we move, no matter how far up the chain we move, there's still the number 1. So again, just if we put this into the model, we've got all these different things going on, whether it's emotion, psychology, material reality number 1 through number 5 million, So yeah, they've all got, there's some sort of truth in it. I believe there is material reality number 1. I think we are occupying material reality number 1 right now. There it is. It's kind of, we're talking through it. And do I believe this is all there is to it? Absolutely not. I think there is lots more going on. But let's not there's a thing within the kind of psychedelic culture as though this is not real, so therefore it's shit, and there's something else going on. It's like, no, why can't this be real and there still be something awesome further down the line? Like, if we move to material reality number 72, why can't maybe we could be in both places at the same time? But that doesn't make number 1 obsolete. It just means that there's a lot of it. So the model could be, the model for this could be vast. It could be some kind of multiversal thing model. But we shouldn't be basing this model on we're all in here and everything else is shit. It's like I said, just that's how I would argue. Maybe broaden the scope of what the model is. But what's here, I think, is important. It's not all of it, but I think it's important. I think I'm important. I think you're important. I think my wife's important. I think my kids are important. And even if I move on to different models of reality, then they're still going to be important to me. This experience is still going to be important to me. If it wasn't, I may as well just kill myself. If I didn't think this was important, then what am I doing here?
Yeah, it's important because it is consciousness. So yeah, of course, but it doesn't matter whether this is material or non-material or
exactly.
only your hallucination or not your hallucination. It's it's important because those are at least real conscious experiences. Those other things, materiality, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but I can certainly imagine if we went down the road of sort of super dimensional beings, that having a realm of matter or of this would be super interesting, and it is super interesting. This is a fucking very interesting place that we find ourselves in, and that's me. Don't think of it as something mundane. I think this is super cool. Whatever, I've had some very far out experiences that in psychedelic experience that have also taken me to places which were a completely different set of laws of reality, and were also super cool. It can all be cool. We don't necessarily have to say that one's good and one's shit.
Yeah. And when it comes to this, you said that my statements reach too far, that everything is subjective and stuff like this. I only say that the notion of objectivity is based on subjectivity. So maybe there is something like objectivity and stuff, but objectivity is understood by subjectivity. By your experience.
I totally agree, and I think that there is, but again, I think there is a line where we can say that whether the line is kind of a consensus of there's enough people that agree with this, or whether it's having a practical use within our subjective experience. There is a place where we can say, yeah, this is, even though I'm experiencing subjectively, it's just happening all the time. Things always fall down. It's happening. So sure, that's just my subjective experience of let's call it gravity, but fine, it's happening. So it's happening so much. In fact, it's happening every time that. Fine, let's just go with it. There is a thing called gravity, and it's making things fall down. So at that point, it's it becomes pointless to say, well, that's just his subjective experience of it. It's like, well, it doesn't that doesn't serve me. Whereas kind of the theory of gravity serves me within my subjective experience. So yeah, I totally concede the point. Everything is subjective at some level.
Yeah. And I have like thoughts about this distinction between like woo stuff and this like rational, truer stuff. So I have some. I made up some like lines that differentiate between those two. For example, my mother has paranoidal schizophrenia, so I have some experiences with dealing with that person, and what I can see is that she also has some like those like other experiences. Yes, like she has like those various hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations. She once saw UFO spaceship in the sky, and like my father told me that when she said that she looked at the sky and he said to her that he doesn't see anything. I told her this story that he told me that, and she started shouting, "No, it's not true. He was staring at the ground all the time. Mm-hmm. He didn't look at the sky, so like he didn't look at the sky. So and it was very aggressive, like she just." Like couldn't think about it like with the calm mind. She was aggressive, like she was behaving as though I am attacking her, and I just told it like not aggressively, completely like neutrally, and like it's one aspect of closed-mindedness.
Yeah, so I mean that is, I mean, like going off the definition I showed earlier, so that is like the definition of irrationality, because she was reacting based on emotion.
Exactly. So one aspect of like differentiating between something woo-woo and something rational and truer is that people who state some things must be open-minded and must be like their reactions should be calm, and they must have ability to like calmly think about other possibilities. Like it's the most basic aspects of this dividing line, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think an example I think we can all relate to here is that we know that whether we're seeing like a disagreement in real life or we're seeing it happen on the internet, at the point where it's just a shouting match where people are just saying, "You're a fucking idiot, no, you're a fucking idiot, you're a bastard," right, this is now a useless conversation. But the point at which people are, so if you're having a calm discourse with someone and you're willing to listen to them, and people are willing to have their ideas picked apart and having and have their ideas challenged, then this is a much more productive conversation. This is a rational conversation. Irrational conversations are usually people threatening to kill each other and shit. So you could very quickly pick up on whether a conversation is rational or irrational just because of the how emotionally charged it is, how emotionally loaded the conversation is.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say like that schizophrenia of my mother, like that I was thinking about this possibility, but I would be very surprised if the schizophrenia of my mother gave her access to some like higher truths about reality, because she's just like closed-minded. So like somebody who has higher access to higher truths of reality should be like open-minded and should understand that other people like just don't have this access. So because of this knowledge, this kind of person with this access to higher truths wouldn't like react so aggressively. So.
Yeah, I think for anything like that where there is some kind of claim of access to higher truth, then it should be able to bring value into this experience. And a classic example of this is like when you see people get very lost in things like conspiracy theories or flat Earth or whatever it is, or even like people who've really gotten lost in the psychedelic rabbit hole and are making claims, then if those claims, if that lifestyle, if the things that you are claiming to be true bring you fuck all value, if the value that it's adding is just you ranting and getting emotionally upset and why does everyone disagree with me, and like you just can't understand, if that's your life, then that's probably a good indication that you're wrong, or that at least there's something very wrong with your sort of delivery. So I think that's again one way that I tend to always ground these things, like, is this bringing value to me? Like if I'm completely convinced that there's a UFO like here now, does it help in any way? Does it help Rob? Does it help me in any way now? Like, if not, fuck it. Forget the UFO. It's pointless. It doesn't do anything. Now, obviously, it's that's a lot more difficult when you're sort of when you've got one of these conditions. You can't you're not necessarily got the the sort of grounded position to be able to say, I'll just dismiss this UFO. So I don't want to be flippant about the condition with your mother, but that's certainly how I approach it with these things. If I feel like something's I'm getting emotionally charged about something, but it's got no value, then probably it's a good indicator to let it go. Anyway, mate, I'm kind of conscious for the time, so I'm going to have to move on to another caller. But again, it's been a really great conversation, and thanks a lot for calling, and hopefully I'll speak to you next time, dude.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've probably got another like 15 minutes. So I see there's a few hands up, so let's try and get through these. I appreciate that it's gone down some rabbit holes with the first few guys, but let's go with Matthias. Matthias, you there, mate? Matthias, you should have a button. If not, I'm going to move on. There you are.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi. I just had this small thoughts on the topic. So if something rational, let's say you say something we could all agree on is rational, but then someone else just copies you, and so can it then become woo-woo very fast? I mean, if he or she doesn't got the whole process of your thought.
Yeah, totally. And I think this ties into what
simple, but it's like, so something very rational can like switch to something very woo-woo in just a second. So
well, so I kind of mentioned this a bit at the beginning in that something what I think is rational or not woo-woo should try and make things clear and make things easily communicated and sort of reduce obscurity, whereas I think woo-woo does the opposite. It goes for obscurity. Now I think this is why I think people import these phrases, because they hear something. It's like the one I've talked about a few times on this channel is and the first caller mentioned it, Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra, for anyone who doesn't know, frequently uses the word quantum in completely inappropriate ways because it sounds very educated, but the way he uses it obscures the truth, because he obscures even the conversation, never mind the truth. So he's like, it's quantum this and quantum healing, quantum states of this and quantum. The guy's got no idea what he's talking about. He's not a quantum physicist. He's just some quack. But he will use these kind of this language in these sort of woo ways. Now, likewise, that and I've frequently talked about people who do the same thing with shamanism. There is some shamanic bullshit out there, and people will go there and they'll sort of start using these terms, this language, this kind of they import this kind of shamanic language and sort of import some of the rituals and sort of make it look like they're doing the same kind of thing, and they're just sort of doing bullshit. So you could absolutely import any sort of linguistic tools in and sort of use it to create complete bollocks, and I think that's happening all over the place. I think philosophically it happens. I think it happens in therapeutically. I think it happens in all. Just look at the psychedelic community. You'll see words being used and promises being made and facts being stated, and it's just a lot of it's just complete shite in my opinion. So totally agree, mate.
Yeah, maybe one small example I thought of. I'm like quite into yoga, physical yoga, and there's a famous saying of one of the main teachers, Patabi Joyce, and he wants it. Practice and all will come. And it's that sentence is being used a lot, but it can become just like a slogan, like just do it, or like Nike, the slogan. So that it's a very simple phrase, but if you just copy it all the wisdom or the thing behind it, just gets lost and gets like I don't know, raped or something. Even it can be, it's
this aesthetic. It's like people take on the look or the language of a thing, but without actually having sort of comprehension of the meaning or what's behind it. So again, you get people who go on like an ayahuasca retreat and come back and declare themselves shamans. You get people who go and go to a few yoga lessons and now they declare they're a yogi. You get people who go, they go to a few karate lessons and now they think they can shoot fireballs out their hands. So there's all sorts of ridiculous grifts in these kind of things, and I think I think being able to talk about them is how we can spot which ones have got the are genuine and which ones are the grift.
And can be a very a contagious thing, this, because it can copy like a virus very quickly if the sentence, if the language is used in this way, and then it can go
because usually the way that it's used, particularly if the person who is using that language has usually not attained it properly, and then if they, what you typically see with these is that they will then start offering it inappropriately. So again, we can use some of these examples, like you could have the world's shittest martial artist opening some kind of martial arts schools and promising you will have a black belt within a year, and so the method is clearly bullshit. It's clearly not following the tradition or the amount of expertise it would take. So there's a grift. Likewise, you can have, you start seeing these places where they will teach you to be a shaman for, pay them this amount of money and you will be a shaman and you can serve ayahuasca, or you could be you'll be a yoga instructor within this, or so that it's usually but you can see the appeal in that though, because it's easier. Like if I'm naive and if I really want that black belt and I'm naive enough, then somebody says they can make me like a ninja black belt in 1 year, as opposed to like 10 years training with the monks in China or something. Then I'm probably going to go for the easy one. Is going to be more appealing. That's the way our culture is kind of wired. We want the easy way. We want the online course. We don't want to go and to train with Shaolin monks. We want to do it in a weekend. So the ease of it and the incentive to do that grift is huge. It's that's why it's so toxic and shitty, I think.
Yeah, but with the example of the martial arts school, it's would be interesting to not only look at that one crappy teacher, but at his students, or how are they evolving with this,
Well, you certainly see that. You see entire disciplines which kind of there are entire schools and academies of martial arts where the core is clearly rotten. Where you see these things, people talking about doing like energy balls and sort of Vulcan death touches and all this kind of stuff. People who say they can kill people with their minds and stuff. It's and some of these organisations are huge and have devout followings. One I was just talking about recently, if we go from the religious angle, the Mormon Church is clearly a very weird little offshoot of the Christian Church, which it sounds almost impossible how it got the traction that it did, but it did, and now the Mormon Church is huge. But it was a crazy little weird offshoot. And so, yeah, and you can have the same thing happen in martial arts, happen in yoga, happen in spirituality, happen in shamanism. You just need that somebody with enough charisma and drive to start the grift, and then you end up with Scientology, and you end up with laser death ray martial arts, and you end up with all sorts of bollocks. So happens very easily, too easily.
Yes, yeah. And and then it's also easily the so if you like address these things or try to think about it or have a dialogue, the trap of you becoming also someone who just says I'm better, I know the truth. So it's so delicate, It's how do you address it without falling into the trap that you're the new guy or the new.
I think you just have to. I think all you can do is just be honest with yourself and just a point. Because I think that is the trap. The trap is some point of. I think with all these things, there is a point of self-deception. There is a point where you have to, and it can happen very sort of like sneakily, but there is a point where you have to sort of deceive yourself, where it's like, okay, I'm going to go along with this because of some reason, and the reason might be a good reason, but there is a point where you cross a line of deception, I think, or where the thing does not serve yourself, and I think you've got to be like aware of that. It's like, okay, do I really believe what this person said, or do I just not want to upset them? Do I really believe what this person said, or do I really believe in what this is being taught here, or am I just too invested in it to say this is bullshit? Like, do I really believe in this spiritual doctrine, or am I just too scared to stand up and walk out? So there's a point there where you're kind of like, oh, okay, actually, I'm just going to go with it. You deceive yourself, and I think if you can stay on top of that, then I think you can avoid a lot of these traps. But it certainly takes some awareness and some courage to do it. It's not easy.
No, and if it's something that you've been invested in for a long time, then you get the inner struggle also. For sure. Like, oh no, this. Yeah,
it could be your entire life.
This is wrong. I need to get out, but it's also a part of me, and I was wrong, and so it's painful.
Not just painful. I mean, some of these things could make you come undone. I mean, if you suddenly have the realization that forget martial arts, like if it was something like religious, say, and you realize that this your entire way of life is like toxic garbage, then what does that make you? What does that make everything? I actually think that having that realization is actually incredibly useful and powerful, because then you can go and you can change your life. But you can see people just like unraveling at this, like, holy shit, I am nothing, I am a lie, so it's not surprising that we have defense mechanisms to stop us, to keep us entrenched in these kind of belief systems. And I've certainly come across it a lot when people have like pushed back on me for some of the things I've said, and I always say that there's absolutely no guarantee that I'm right about anything I say. But some people you see get very emotionally invested in the gurus or the particular, what they believe about, psychedelic experiences or whatever. And I would say that that's usually an indication that they're probably on the wrong track, to be honest.
Yeah, get away.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, dude. Let's move on to the next call. But pleasure speaking to you, mate.
Yeah.
Let's see. So let's see. I think I'm gonna have time for one more before Rachel kicks me off. Okay, I'm gonna have to go with. I'm gonna go with Gary Lee, because I think he's had his hand up the longest. So Gary, you should have like an invitation. You there, mate? Gary Lee.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Gary.
Here we are. How's it going, man?
It's going good, dude. How are you?
I'm good, hanging in there. So, I think bouncing off the last topic that you guys were talking about, I think spirituality, psychedelia, the whole world of, whatever the whole realm is like the last trap. You know what I mean? It's the last trap of the ego. And once you can almost get through that, then I mean, I guess you can get to the truth, quote unquote. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let's unpack it a little bit. So, when you say it's the last, you said like psychedelia, spirituality, it's the last trap. So can you like define that for us?
It's the last. Like, it's so easy to say, "Oh, I'm enlightened," or
"This
is my guru," or "This is, I made it. Here we are. I did 5-MeO DMT, or I did ayahuasca 200 times. I'm obviously enlightened." And I think that's the last thing that somebody has to get through in order to see the truth.
Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily bundle that within, say, like psychedelia and spirituality. I mean, obviously there's some of that's going on there, but I think people could make the similar sort of claims based on, we just talked about religion or martial arts or anything. I think really what's going on there is it's people who've, let me think, how can I put this? It's who've not had that truly kind of humbling experience where they are kind of like open-minded. And I think the probably something that is a trap in those things that you mentioned is that there is a kind of like a foregone conclusion that just because you've had these experiences and you've seen something extraordinary, you are now open-minded. Like you're now, and I think actually the opposite is very possible. I think I certainly have experience of a lot of people who have these experiences and just accept it instantly on face value, and that first thing they've seen is the truth now, and that is almost absurd because it's just such a misfire of what they think is going on, because they think, oh well, you're if you don't believe what I've just told you, you're a materialist, and I'm like, well, I guess you could call me materialist, but I'm also all these other things. Like I kind of, like saying to the other callers, like I think there is a bit of truth in all these things. But somebody who just like goes all in on the first thing, I have an experience. It tells me I'm God. It tells me I'm a dragon. Therefore, I am. That's that. I think that's actually incredibly close-minded. But trying to get them to spot that is very difficult.
Yeah, I see it as like the last attachment, another way to put it, if you want to go in terms of like Buddhism, it's just the last, I think it's the last straw, to latching on to whatever the psychedelic realm, like whatever the whole like trying to get outside of this realm. Have you seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I love that movie. I like the what they term the alpha verse. Like this is the alpha verse.
That was like the primary one, wasn't it? The one where it all started from.
Yeah, so that's what I like to think. Like this is the alpha verse. Everything else is just another realm of the mind, I guess you could say. And this is what's important. This is where it all comes back to.
Well, there was something you just said there, which I think was a really good phrase for it. So this phrase of attachment, because that's I think when these people that we're talking around, what they are attached to is understanding. Is kind of like they've got to be able to explain it somehow, and the way they can often try and explain it is through something fantastical. Or something that doesn't, you have to do a lot of jumps to sort of buy into. You have to follow this guru. You have to do this or whatever. But if you, that's what they're after, like a way of saying, yes, I get this now. And I think that in itself is, like I said, one of these traps. I think I don't necessarily think whatever is going on in the bigger picture of this experience is there to be completely understood and codified and written down and sort of like, so you're looking at it, yes, that's it, that is existence there. Like, so when you get these people saying, I understand existence, I understand God, I understand, like, it's like yeah, dude, I mean, I'd actually feel sorry for those people, because that mean what, that must be very mundane if you feel that you understand the entirety of creation and even understand like yourself even, and it's clear that a lot of these people don't even understand themselves, and who does?
Yeah, man. Yeah, the only thing that I understand is that I don't understand anything.
Yeah, exactly. And who would want to? Like you say, it's this like endless novelty, and these people who make these claims of like understand themselves usually manifest absolutely nothing of that. So it's clearly it's not, that belief is not serving them. It's not, for the people who claim they have extraordinary powers, and I've yet to meet someone who says that they're enlightened who doesn't come across like a complete bell end. So it's like, what's the point of the claim? What does it do for you? Just go with it. Just go with the experience. Like, you don't need to understand it. It doesn't, it doesn't make your life necessarily better to understand it. Like, understanding how your dick works doesn't make sex better. It just fucking just have the experience. Like, be present and have the experience. So that's how I kind of view it anyway. I think so understanding, I think, is or that need. I don't think understanding itself. I think there's a lot of value in understanding and knowledge, but that need to understand and categorize and explain, I think, is one of these attachment traps.
Exactly, man. I like the analogy. That was a great analogy. I'm going to keep that one in the back of my head.
I always try and bring things down to the basest possible level.
Most primal level.
Yeah, it always comes down to taking a shit or having sex.
It's easy to understand. Yeah, man. I don't think I got anything else to say. Keep doing your thing. This is great, and thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Cheers, Gary. Cheers, mate.
Yep, have a good one.
All right, guys, I'm sorry I didn't get round to everybody. Sort of going for 2 hours now, but this was a really great conversation. I think I'll have to keep doing this thing of having these kind of themes and these themed conversations. In fact, maybe we'll even carry this one on, because I see just like a few people with their hands raised. So maybe then on the next live stream, let's carry this topic over, and we'll sort of see if we can wrap it up. But I've loved the conversations tonight. I've had some really great. Yeah, some really, great rabbit holes that we've gone down there. So big thank you to all of you, especially to those, for the ones who have got their hands up, making a note. So O2 Junket, Earthworth, Avi Atava, Zero Minded, and King's Gambit. Guys, if you come to the next live stream, and then I will make sure that you guys get dealt with first. Apologies I couldn't get to you now, but Rachel commands me when the woman says I've got to go, then it's time to go. So I'm going to end this live stream. Like I say, no new video next week because I'm going to be at a festival, but hopefully I'll have something to report the week after that. And on that note, guys, I will bid you all adieu, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.